Now that we are familiar with the key concepts and procedure of the study, moving forward I will explain further. So, the objective of this study, to my understanding, is to explore the relationship between attributions and negative emotions in individuals with different parenting-related traumatic experience. Therefore, the title, which is Influence of Attributions on Negative Emotions of Individuals Experiencing Parenting-Related Trauma, in my opinion, is a bit misleading, especially with the use of the word influence. The reason is because the experiment explored more about whether attribution styles predict negative emotions in individuals with parenting-related trauma rather than touching on the reason why. However, they did discuss it in the discussion part by relating it to older theories or studies. The hypothesis, therefore, along with the title, wasn't supported by the findings in this study, as the experiment didn't have the objectives reflected or originally intended by the researchers. As for the topic chosen, I think it is a very relevant and interesting topic. If you remember, it is consisted of three key concepts, which are the attribution styles, dimensions of negative emotion, and parenting-related trauma. The connection between trauma and attribution had been brought up several times by previous studies. For example, in 2018, Cunningham and Rank found in their study that a mother who experienced childhood trauma might have different understanding related to their children's behavior and their own parenting method. Other studies by Schechter et al. In 2015 also found that mothers with several degrees and types of trauma have greater negativity in their attribution of their child, themselves, or their primary attachment figure. These studies show that there is a connection between trauma attribution, and we can also between trauma and attribution. And we can also see the trend on how it is always related in a negative manner. As for what attribution is, Hogg and Fahan in 2018 in their book stated that attribution is the process of assigning a cause to our own behavior and that of others. So in this study, Wu, Chow, and Chow looked to specifically see the correlation between each attribution styles and negative emotion in several cases of parenting-related trauma. How they did it was by giving a survey to measure the degree of each attribution styles of the participants, and then a survey to measure their negative emotion, and then analyze the results to see whether or not attribution styles can predict negative emotions. The analysis was also viewed as a group analysis, so each group will be analyzed independently. The results and analysis was then presented in several sections, and then further discussed in the discussion part. As there are a lot of components in this study, I will only highlight some findings that are discussed in the discussion part. For example, for both groups, which is the control and trauma group, task attribution was a significant positive predictor of general negative emotions. This is because, according to Weiner in 1974, task difficulty is an external factor that can't be controlled by the individuals. So when the outcome is a failure, it might evoke negative emotions as it happens beyond the individual's control. And then another example is that in child disability group, ability attribution positively predicted general negative emotion. And the researchers explained this by using Karstein's theory. So according to Karstein et al. In 2009, this is likely because their negative emotions come from the doubt of their ability to care for their disabled child and the stress that comes with it. So in conclusion, I think it is more proper to say that this study provides a raw material or basic findings for future studies to explore, because the findings in the study is still in the discovery level and not cause-effect level. For example, they found that task attribution is positively related to general negative emotions in both groups, but the findings alone failed to explain on how or why that was the case. Most of these questions were instead discussed in the discussions part, using other known theories or previous study, whereas some weren't really touched upon. Therefore, it provided a lot of recommendation for later studies to explore more on the topics that hadn't been discussed yet in this study. Also, while the study had a lot of components and concepts used, they didn't include analysis of every single one of them, sans the tables provided to support each analysis category. They also didn't discuss a lot of the findings in the discussion part. Furthermore, I would argue that some of the explanation provided in the discussion part either could be elaborated more because extra individual effort was needed from the readers in order to tie together the explanation into a conclusion, or possibly unrelated to the findings. Some of it was also questionable because while it started off with a relation to a legitimate theory, it ended in an assumption by the researchers, so the validity of the explanation can be a bit questionable. And lastly, one of the key concepts, which is the 6 dimensions of negative emotion, was not brought up in the introduction part, which would have made it better for readers to understand the study further. But overall, this study contributed to the study regarding attribution, negative emotion, and parenting-related trauma, and it provided great theoretical basis for other researchers that want to explore more about these topics. It showed us that there is a correlation between attribution and negative emotion in individuals that suffers from parenting-related trauma. So it can possibly be used as a reference for parenting intervention or other efforts to help individuals who experience difficulties as a parent.